Hello watchers, hope all of you are doing very nice amid the COVID-19 pandemic, which is keeping us indoors and keeping us restless about when can we cross the boundaries of our home and how much. Well, I believe that someday the world will restore to its normalcy, and it will be very soon, in fact as soon as possible. But ironically today we'll be talking about a person who could never adequately come out of his motherland in spite of being a self-imposed exile. The man who belonged to Dublin and didn't. The man who considered the city of Dublin to be part of him, a metonymy of his own being and becoming, in spite of the fact that he called it a pile of broken heaps and left the place in search for companions, in search for ambience of artistic freedom, sovereignty and encouragement into the then site of pilgrimage for the avant-garde artists and his Paris. So today we'll be talking about James Joyce and his immortal text, A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, as part of the EM18 course of COURSE University in English program, which goes by the name of Literary Theory and Criticism. However, before we enter the text, intervening it from theoretical points of view, we need to understand the text's special position as an institution in itself and as the pioneer of the self-made institution that it inculcated amid the modernist artists and readers. First and foremost, we need to understand, when we talk about political contingencies of a text, do we restrict ourselves into the content of the text? Answer is no, because the text is not a flat sociological statistical figure of reality around us. It has negotiated some artistic maneuvers. It has undergone several layers of imagination and intuitive modifications unto the reality that it reflects as a mirror. It has a touch of the artist's genius and the artist's schizophrenia. It has a touch of the proficiencies of the propensities of the aesthetic quality of the man or woman who is making it, manufacturing it as a product, and also the deficiencies or lack of that man and his surrounding. So when we talk about the text, Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, and his ready-made susceptibility to literary critical interventions and theoretical debates, we have to understand that it is not a work of art only, neither is it a flat sociological statistical document. It is a negotiation between these two domains. It is a negotiation between form and content. So we need to pay respect to the form and the artistic and aesthetic engagements that the artist has made into the form, as well as the content and the context from which the content did emanate. We have to also understand, and we will have to admit, that modernism is not, as it is often mistaken, primarily an art movement. In fact, nothing in the world apart from the art for art's sake existence is primarily art. It is art in manifestation. It is art in its structural negotiation of how it would hold forth the impetus and the encouragement, the recording and the reflection to the receiver. Primarily, before being art, it is a negotiation with reality. And modernism had a reality of its own that compelled the artists to venture into experimentation and avant-garde. And what was that? The answer, a war-driven society full of conflicts in which there was no rhetoric of certainty available anymore in the existing forms of artistic expression and representation. For example, during the Renaissance, there was this attitude of humanism in which the anthropocentric universe and the worldview considered human being to be the unquestionable center of the world. Before that, in the medieval ages, theocentric as the worldview was, God was unmistakably the center of the world. So there was a center for certitude during the Middle Ages, and there was a center for certitude during the Renaissance. There was a center for certitude in the so-called Western Age or 18th century Age of Enlightenment, or the Age of Dryden and Pope, as we sometimes call it as a literary prehistoric. And reason, neoclassical rigidity of rationality, logic, routine, symmetry, and formal correctness. These things constituted the certainty. In the 19th century first half, we had the birth of Romanticism, and imagination was the center of certainty. Nature was the ontological center of certainty, and imagination was the epistemological certitude through which unmistakably higher truth than our eyes could attest could be comprehended and known. And beauty was the manifestation of the intuitive engagement of imagination with nature, or Natur, as the German transcendentalists used to call it. But during the Victorian era, this certitude disappeared gradually from the worldview, and the readers and writers, the artists in the common man and women, they couldn't think about anything which is without dispute or beyond dispute, the center of the world with certitude and warranty. There was no confirmed center anymore. And war in the modern era, the First World War, drove humanity to consider reality as fragmentary, uncertain, settleless. It is amid this chaos and amid this breakdown of communication, including man to man and man to woman and woman to woman communication, man to nature communication, and the communication between the knowing subject and his object of knowledge called reality, that we had to reconfigure certain solutions to get rid of the anxiety of a melancholic loss of a hypothetical unity called certainty or center that would conform everything. A story which would act as an origin, a landscape which would be a solution or panacea for every type of grief and uneasy feelings, a reason which would transcend the follies and foibles of the daily habits of the everyday. Nothing was available with that type of certitude and with that type of centrality. So there was a need for a solution, and the seekers of this solution were called avant-garde. They were the avant-gardes of the aesthetic experimentation, how to represent reality, how to constitute reality with language, with paintbrush, with melody. And of course, the existing forms couldn't give them the solution that they were seeking. They were seeking for a solution that would give them a right and freedom to completely explode with uneasiness about what the world has become without center and without confirmation of certainty. And at the same time give them a theoretical or hypothetical means of coming out of it. The artist could unify the world that was no longer unified. The artist could know the totality that has become fragmentary all around in the everyday. So, what we know flatly and almost laymanishly to be an art movement, to be an art movement, namely Modernism, was something that was a human encounter with the real political, economic society, the real behavioral psychology of everyday, the real pressures of life as it is lived. So it was kind of a response and a responsibility instead of a genius or an innovation, so to say. So When we talk about James Joyce as a portrait of the artist as a young man, primarily, we have to appreciate the negotiations with reality that he made with the forms available to him and with the forms permuted and combined by him into newer configurations, into newer experimentations. Stream of consciousness is just one of them. Epiphany is what we can say to the Joycean means of solution to the world of uncertainty and to the world without any kind of scope of transcendence. To the irredeemable world, so to say, the redemption could come with the artist as a figure, as a Promethean figure who will bring the light of certainty, bring the light of knowledge, not through revolution as Shelleyan poetics would be insisting, not through sensuousness of the Keatsian aesthetics of Romantic era would insist, not through the meditative tranquility of Tintern Abbey that Wordsworth would be talking about, nor through the supernaturalization of natural and naturalization of supernatural, which Coleridge was on and off into in his narcoleptic fantasies, but through epiphanies, sudden revelations of truth amid the uncertainties of our surface lived reality. So when we talk about the artistic greatness of Joyce, we have to tie it to the political economy of Joyce's times, to the city of Dublin and its sociology, to the condition of life that Joyce and his friends were living when a pit called James Joyce was running through the North Richmond Street describing Araby, and Mungo's sister was giving some form of illusion of reality. And to the times when James Joyce himself became a young man, like the artist he was talking about here. At the same time, as we look into this history of political and social reality, there is another horizon that is continuously negotiating and playfully interacting with it. The horizon of what we can call to the history of ideas. And it was Marx on one hand insisting that everything is determined by the ideology, which is a form of false consciousness, manipulated and maneuvered and designed and engineered and then naturalized and mystified by the dominant classes to oppress and keep under delusion the lower working classes into perennial forms of obedience. And on the other hand, Freud was talking about the unconscious, which is the real truth about me that I cannot know, a part of the mind that I cannot mind, a part of myself that I am continuously triggered by, continuously pricked by, continuously agitated by, but is not under my mastery. The sovereignty of myself is very, very weak as compared to the forces and operations, thrusts and drives coming out from our unconscious. So on one hand, there is this model of mental, radical uncertainty in whatever we do, think, or be. And on the other hand, there is this model coming from Marx, which is talking about the political economic determination of what we think, do, and be. And Joyce was a cusp, so to say, of these two types of interpretations of the reality in the history of ideas. So when we read a portrait of the artist as a young man, we'll have to look into the text, both psychoanalytically and in a Marxist mode of criticism. Only then we will be able to understand what was Joyce's responsibility. We'll look into the text now, and I repeat the reminder. Joyce's portrait of the artist as a young man like any other modernist text whatsoever in whatsoever genre, is a responsibility of the budding contemporary artist towards reality, is a response of the artist towards the context he was compelled to choose his art experimentations from, is a negotiation between his imagination and craftsmanship on the one hand, the skills, so to say, and the situations into which he was living, the situations he was trying to escape or the situations he was trying to re-invoke. And not anything to be put on a pedestal, isolated and misunderstood as artistic genius. No. It is, like any other form of art, the infinity of art, so to say, run by the single highest common factor that it is a negotiation between form and content, and the artist as an individual, and the collective situation in which the artist is walking. And when you add the reader to the situation, you get the reader as an individual, with his gender, with his sexual orientation, with his own schooling, with his own family background, with his own nationality and religion, as factors which are filtering his way of reading or her way of reading, and the situation in which he or she is, the collective situation of the world. For example, today we are reading a portrait of the artist as a young man, and we are locked within our houses, residences, shelters, niches, and the text is that written by self-imposed exile, and the irony of the reading begins with that. So the reader's situation, reader's reality, reader's own socio-political, cultural situatedness is a filter and is a factor, just like the artist's reality was a factor. So let's look into the text now. There will be 4 parts of this lecture, because it's a very complex text and you'll have to understand all the theoretical explorations of the text that is required for an undergraduate and a postgraduate student. And in this first part, we will be talking about the possible Marxian ways of looking into this text as a documentation and representation of the reality of Joyce, Dublin, and Ireland in the first half of 20th century. So let's have a look into the presentation now.